When we are doing the will of our true self, we are inevitably doing the will of the universe. In magic, these are seen as indistinguishable. That every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself. And as long as you are doing the will of the universe, then it is impossible to do anything wrong.
There is this connection between everybody and his total environment.
Hey. Shalom, shalom. Or in the immortal words of our friend Jiggy, who passed this weekend, hey, smoke weed every day. I am Keats Ross. Thank you for joining us. This is, I think, the fourth daily live stream I've done, and I'm excited to include a guest, a good friend, a wonderful writer, author of both the dive and hunt manuals. He's got a great website, Dive Mind. You can find all of his links in the description. Anthony Tyler, thank you for joining me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me back on, man. We've had conversation on your podcast once before, so anyone that doesn't know, you go check that out too. And yeah, you're definitely top tier favorite people of mine to talk to. So this is gonna be a good time.
Well, thanks, man. You as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
And I'd read Hunt Manual when you sent it to me, and our good friend and fellow We the Hollowed illustrator collaborator Eric Millar did the awesome cover art, which is really wonderful. And I implore everyone to purchase a copy on Amazon and leave a review. I need to do that myself. But I just love this tether that you have with these two manuals, and this kind of how do I put it? It's in this journalistic sense, but using this allegory, right? So the first one was kind of a deep sea exploration. Hunt Manual is more about this kind of cave dwelling, primordial, shadow work. And I know we dove deep into Dive Manual, but maybe we could focus a little bit on Hunt Manual, because I don't think we've talked about Hunt Manual yet.
I don't think
as
so.
much as I'd like to. Yeah. So yeah, tell me about what the process was like in constructing that, because you're always so succinct in covering a lot of theologies and allegories, and everyone from Jung to, you even have a Evil Dead quote, which is great.
Thanks.
And so what was that process like? Were you doing kind of deep shadow work and creating it?
Yeah, I was, and it was something. There was definitely shadow work involved with Dive Manual. Because if you're just genuinely doing any sort of a disciplined spiritual study, there's going to be that quote unquote shadow work. But this was like a much more concerted effort. Whereas Dive Manual, you could say, it tried to touch on like a lot of different things in just metaphysics and esotericism, but the mostly general, like the main push was the divine feminine, and
Right.
Hunt Manual being a push to the shadow, like you said. And it in many ways was I wanted to do something much more Fortean heavy for fun, just because I do really enjoy that stuff. And but I wanted to keep strong esoteric roots. And I also Dive Manual was a bit of I don't know, for just like lack of more description, like about it had a little bit to do with me coming into my own and
Right.
telling that story. And I don't know, I guess the point was a bit more of a positive angle, and and there was a lot of a dark fascination, the things like a lot of the Fortean stuff and things like possession and etc. Poltergeist, just like the dark side of the unexplainable was stuff that didn't really quite have a place. I dabbled with a little bit in Dive Manual, but I didn't want to make it too long, so there was a
Yeah.
lot of left over. And so I decided I wanted to kind of foster that a little bit, and then it just kind of I decided to lean into, because we talked a little bit before. I was, I've been raised on punk rock and metal and horror movies, and so I love that whole dark aesthetic. And even though for a long time I didn't quite know, I didn't know, I didn't have the words to articulate it. It was always something. I always have had a fascination with with dark things, not exclusively, but for the better, for
Right.
constructive reasons.
Yeah.
And that's a lot, that lends to shadow work itself. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the short of it. And it was something that I knew was, when you immerse yourself in a concept like that, like for me, like just writing a book in general, especially if it's going to be geared towards, I don't know, some sort of self-analysis, in one way or another, it's going to reflect in your life in those kind of chaos magic principle terms. And so I definitely, it was something, it was part of the writing process, readying myself for, mm, the purge quality of it. Because I'll get into this a little bit. Um there is the old saying, in many different ways, but one being like, speak of the devil and he shall appear, that
Sure.
whole law of attraction motif. And well, I do think there is relevance to the ideas of like priming your psychology, your psyche, and manifesting things. The law of attraction isn't quite as straightforward, it's not always copy paste. And in fact, if people know anything about alchemy, that the opposites are very important in many
Hmm.
cases. So,
Yeah, the communion of them for sure, or the
right.
third mind. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so if the whole avoidance mentality that you find in New Age of just like avoid the negative at all cost is it's so impractical, it's incorrect, it's severely detrimental. It's like a very Freudian approach, honestly, where it was all about like, yes, we have these negative maladaptive qualities to the human experience, but um let's just ignore that and let's stuff it down as far as possible, and let's just like belittle anybody that um wants to consider what might be lurking underneath. And then Jung, who I very much enjoy, I'm a big proponent of. He was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
He was all about, let's find out what's going on in the primordial recesses of the human experience, because that is where we're going to salvage our entire existence. Because the shadow itself is that which lacks self-identity, and and that can be good or bad.
Mhm.
And sometimes it will be both. But the fact of the matter is, it's certainly not all bad. And if you embrace it wholeheartedly, or you banish it or whatever wholeheartedly, you're going to be missing whole aspects of yourself.
Yeah, I know in my own, kind of praxis or processes, there was something that jumped out in Hunt Manual, especially from an audiomantic standpoint, in working with what you termed distortions, and
Mhm.
how I visualize, or kind of can encapsulate these toughs, these terrors, these toils, right,
Mhm.
within the self, as this kind of visualized distortion, or this kind of brain mind barrier kind of scramble. And you said no great problems arise when we come into contact with other things amidst the distortion, things that exist outside of the mother and father, things we can scarcely begin to understand. You see, amidst the distortions, like a weak bandwidth, it appears that some things can piggyback off the emanations of the diurnal forces of nature, and they can take the shells of these emanations and turn them into a great many things and use them as they please. And you had talked later about when you were just saying you kind of consort possession, that there was a, if I'm remembering correctly, you were talking about how when priests deal with possessions, the person that they're exercising needs to believe they can be exercised. They have
Yeah.
to, like, there needs to be some attuneship of, you know, being ready or willing to kind of excise these things.
Absolutely.
And when
Yeah.
you're not communing with that, when you're not ready for that, like these distortions, you know, these different outside forces and tethers can, as you said, piggyback and kind of rollick things, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that framework comes from the hermetic models of the trees of
Right.
life and death. The Qliphoth being the proverbial shells around the Sephiroth, which are like the ideals of existence, as you're well aware of. And
Mhm.
it um I the trees of life and death are not the only models, and certainly the Kabbalist hermetic trees are not the only trees of life and death, but they all follow the same motif of uh, these uh, axioms of manifestation and existence within in the microcosm and macrocosm. And yeah, when in terms of manifestation, yeah, you truly there belief in and of itself is clearly an adaptation mechanism. You can see it
Right.
all throughout I mean, it's just quintessential to the human experience. Even if you're not
Survival
a
mechanism too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, even if you're not a religious, you use belief and faith. And those aren't exactly the same things, although um they definitely lend to each other. But the whole idea of being open, you don't even have to be completely sold on something, like in the case of possession that you brought up. I don't think that things are straightforward in the fire and brimstone
Right. And
or
the
orthodox
absolutes.
sense.
Right.
Right. But do unexplainable things happen? Yeah, and do unexplainable things happen in these possession type scenarios? Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah.
And
And more so like, what are we allowing ourselves to kind of lead in and feed off of? Right.
right.
Um, you know, I know in myself, and maybe this communion I have with my own brain chemistry, it's a life's work to kind of supersede these thoughts, to supersede the, you know, the continual doubts and the pressures, the stresses that, you know, are internal, like forever warning. And sometimes they just eat you whole, and sometimes, you know, you got to go wither in a dark place for a
Yeah.
little bit and let it work. But I do enjoy the fact, you know, and in this allegory of the hunt, of, you know, this perma seeking behavior to kind of help rid or help quell, at least, you know, the amount of these distortions that occur.
Yeah, because I mean, the just like faith and belief, like the shadow in and of itself is its own adaptation mechanism. And it we would be unhealthy without it, and that's kind of the whole it's kind of the whole Faustian motif,
Right.
where I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but I've definitely talked about it in general before. How um, Mephistopheles in the story of Faust, that Gautier's rendition of it
Hmm.
is, for all intents and purposes, a devil throughout. But in the beginning, it's very much chaired in the like the framework of the Book of Job, and Mephistopheles is an angel in the court of heaven that comes to God in earnest, and says, like, do you think that Faust would still respect you if we gave him limitless power, or like in layman's terms? And
Hmm.
and so and Dante, the Virgilian archetype in the Divine Comedy. These are all ultimately, there's a lot to be said about both of those stories and those archetypes, but it's ultimately our relationship with the shadow. And both of them, even though one's clearly more helpful than the other, they they I don't, they did they very much, among other things, describe in detail how absolutely crucial it is to develop a rapport with that psychological archetypal shadow.
Right.
Because if you don't, then it will start to take over, and it'll start to spill out. And I mean, and I'm not even necessarily saying, like, in I'm not trying to take it to extremes and like full classical possession or anything, but it'll it'll take over in the ways that you see it happen in everyday life, when people start to stuff things down
Hmm.
that they don't want to deal with in life, and they start lashing out at people more. Perfect example, and that's very
Yeah.
commonplace.
Or like, yeah, harmful escapism.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's just the simple fact of the matter is, if you don't take time to clean your psychological closet in that way, it'll just fester, and it's not going to go away.
Yeah. I
And you
mean, this
can.
is also poignant too, considering, this hypothesis I have about, kind of a neurodivergent way to routinize kind of days as a ritual. And it really is this attempt to commune with the other, which I'm considering in this case brain chemistry, right? Something
Right.
that's, you know, we have very little resolve or help to kind of, fight. It's almost oppressive at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's poignant talking about this because this has been a common theme for me recently, and kind of consorting the shadow, maybe the dark recesses of some of the lesser favorable things of my neurodivergence, right?
Hmm.
Um and yeah, finding a way to commune with it. And it's the same, even, my history with kind of addiction, or any kind of self-harm or escapism. It's always been used as escapism. It's always been used to run away, and maybe just kind of, this decision that I would make, I would ingratiate the shadow almost, and just become it, and just, follow suit, rather than, lose myself away for quite a while, instead of, figuring out that liminal space between the two, you know.
Yeah. I need to link you up on a side note with my friend Justin Otto of the Dharma Junkie podcast. You and
Oh,
him
cool.
would get along very well. Yeah, I have similar conversations with him, and he lives near me in Pensacola, so I hang out with him sometimes. And yeah, he's very much of the same mindset. I would love to see you two go off.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll figure that out. But yeah, I can completely relate to that. And I was talking to him the other day about similar things while we were just hanging out, and he reminded me of the simple yet like so poignant just point, I guess, that a lot of these things you do mention brain chemistry and things, like so much of our emotional experience gets snowballed and catalyzed by bodily sensations. It's a
Right.
simple point, but it's not emphasized enough sometimes, even for myself. Like from being hangry to not getting enough sleep to doing something like shadow work. Like once you start digging in those recesses and trying to really take a hard look at some of the things that you like, because the shadow encompasses the ways that you have been unkind to yourself and
Right.
like unkind to others, like generally speaking. So it's a matter of uh, showing yourself love necessarily, and most crucially using the discernment to work through the things that you've maybe shown too much love to, like in neurotic ways. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and that was something I had to, go after finishing writing Hunt Manual, talking about the law of manifestation and things like that. I did notice the further I got into the process, the more I was certainly being primed, like psychologically and existentially, for that sort of purgative quality.
Hmm.
And I noticed it more in my life, where I certainly don't think, it's not like I feel like I manifested negative things in my life, but what I did do is I couched um, my reaction and response to those things in that mentality of the shadow work, and it brought up a lot of deeper things, like just to illustrate, family members go through some fairly serious surgeries. I had a childhood friend die of alcohol poisoning last year. I
Yeah. I'm sorry
moved
to hear
across
that.
country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace, Bob. but that's how it goes sometimes.
Hmm.
And so it was enough to. It's not like I hadn't experienced hardship before, but I had, like I said, I'd couched it in such a way where I was already deeply immersed in those things, and it really just clicked in such a way where, um, and especially after releasing the book, I felt like I gave myself some release fatigue as well, and so it all just
Yes.
snowballed, and I
The
had to,
postpartum depression of finalizing a project. I
yeah,
feel that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very legitimate thing, and
Yeah.
I didn't fully realize it to the extent, but so I ended up having to take like an unexpected hiatus for something like 6 weeks or so, and there was, um, I I felt very self-aware in the sense of like this can't continue forever, but it
Hmm.
was it was so bottom for a little bit there. It was definitely just taking it one day at a time as I slowly developed my perspective on these life circumstances, and um something, I feeling much better on the other side. What I can say about it is it's real magic right there.
Right.
Like in the sense of like there's no, I'm not levitating, I'm not seeing the future or casting love spells. This is dealing with operant mechanisms of the psyche in ways that that um have like confluence with the macrocosm, tree of
Yeah,
life,
absolutely.
sephirotic type action. And
Yeah.
when you start to tap into those things, which is just a very human thing, it's not even like you have to be special or anything. You just have to go about it in a concerted effort. That so much of mysticism and metaphysics is just routine, like you're
Yeah.
talking about, it's like going to the gym. If you just keep up with it and you're diligent about it, you'll see a lot more result than you would probably expect.
Yeah. I think
And
too, the heavy connotations and just the weight of a lot of the terms or the identities that we may have uh been raised or fell into, as you said, I too grew up, punk rock and, a horror fan and all that good stuff, but, broken home and all that good stuff, right?
mhm,
But
mhm,
I think when I thought about anarchism, there always needed to, like, my dream was, my goal is to always to customize life, and like the idea of anarchism or anarchic magic doesn't have to mean that it's spontaneous all the time. It's just a highly customizable, right?
right,
Customizable seat in your life, and customizing a routine specifically for you, and and seeding the things that you want to seed.
mhm,
And I think we fall, like, especially in these circles and a lot of the metaphysical circles, I'll say, I think we fall short, um conversing more about the words, right, and the connotations of the words, and these shorthand that a lot of us need to develop to get points and ideas across. And I think that's one thing that I've been struggling with, is just all of the connotations, all of the heaviness when trying to converse to anybody else about certain things that are happening metaphysically, but not being specific, right? Not being as specific as I should be, because, these are the words themselves are magical in the sense that, they conjure something quickly in everybody's psyche.
yeah,
And when you talk about, shadow work, I think people think of it, there's a lot of misdiagnosed ideas about it, and there's a
yeah,
lot of very specific diagnosed ideas about it. And I always think it's great that it can entail all of that, and whether we call it, the dark night of the soul, or whatever, it's shadow work, or you know um or banishment, right?
yeah,
Or the attempt to, I think it's important that, our we're specific about the type that, we're going through in our own kind of voices and our own words. And that's why I really dug hunt manuals, because you convey it in a way that covers a lot, but it's still very personal. And I could see that within, you know, your conception of it, your construction of it, that you were doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And yeah, I definitely was. One of the biggest, uh, like truly encompassing aspects of the writing process for me was understanding, trying to reconcile the idea of predator and prey,
Hmm.
from like a genuine metaphysical mindset, because I really don't have much patience for the Abrahamic dichotomy.
Yeah.
I'm over it. I really genuinely appreciate the symbolism, and I appreciate Christianity, Hebrew and Islam, but I don't appreciate the organization of them, to be honest with you. I just don't. I don't have much respect for it. I respect the individuals. I respect the history, the esoteric implications and how they were originally developed. But I don't think that much of those things have as much relationship to their roots as people like to think. And
Yeah.
um, so for me, a lot of Hunt Manual was because I was born in the West. These symbols are much more a part of me than there are Eastern symbols. I'm certainly not as well versed in Hindu as I am Christianity.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I have a much more Eastern mentality, specifically more Buddhism and Taoism. But so a lot of that was me reconciling w- the archetypal evolutionary food for thought left over from our Abrahamic history, and what were the translation and the true intent behind those stories is so lost today. Not completely, but you're talking about the general masses, very much lost. And so, like for instance, so we're talking about predator and prey. The Book of Job was something that I found a lot of, just for how small it is. There's so much food for thought in there, and
Yeah.
um, it really, if you really want to be genuine about reading some of these stories, especially the Old Testament, you find that, for example, Yahweh truly is not perfect. He's not even all knowing or omnipotent in the ways that
Yeah.
people perceive him today.
He's
That's
somewhat
that
of a lesser god. Yeah, too.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
genuinely how he's depicted. That's genuinely how the authors of these stories, of this mythology, intended it. Yahweh was not meant to be this omnipotent, omnipresent thing. If
Right.
anything,
He's
it
not the absolute. Like he's not.
no,
Yeah.
not by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he's very petulant and
Hmm.
childish and neurotic, and very demiurgish. The only thing about Yahweh, and again, I'm not even bashing Christianity. I have genuine respect for it, but like I said, I don't, because of that. I'm not gonna toe the line for things that I think are false or that have been misunderstood either. And Yahweh is basically the Zeus archetype, except I heard Jung make this point once, and it's very true. The difference between the Zeus archetype, which was not the first rendition of that archetype, and Yahweh, Yahweh kind of changed the game a little bit because he took so much more of a personal interest in the nature of humanity than these other gods.
Right.
Um, so there's food for thought there, because Yahweh certainly is not evil. That's a conclusion that some
Well,
people
I
come
mean, it
to.
says it all right there when it says that he made us in his image, right?
Right,
What's
right.
more, he's the ultimate human. All
Yeah,
of the like all of the faults and everything intertwined.
right. Yeah,
Like that.
made in his image, not just physically speaking, but
Right.
our
Exactly.
psychological makeup as well. Because you make a great point, because that's a great case in point of how, um, I'm reading, Satan in the Book of Job acts more like the prosecuting attorney or adversary than anything evil, and God goes along with Satan in the story. Absolutely, well
Yeah.
said. And this is food for thought that I go into a little further in Hunt Manual, because I'm also, you know, I'll also say that I look at these things symbolically. I look at them
Right.
mythologically. I do think
You're
that they
not a Bible
represent.
literalist.
No, I do think they represent quintessential metaphysics. I think that
Yeah,
there's heuristic reality to them, but I'm not a
absolutely.
literalist at
Yeah,
all.
just allegorically speaking too. That you know, there's a lot of great wisdom in there.
Right. And if you and so two takeaways from the book of Job that I think are really pertinent to this conversation in general is one, Satan, it represents the shadow here. It's not actually an evil thing. Like the quotes or the commenter said, if anything, it's more like an attorney,
Right, an
um
adversary.
yeah, and it's very much indicative of, again, the whole Faustian motif and this alchemical purge. So another strong running theme throughout our conversation. And the other point is that Yahweh is very much going through the same mystical process in trying to understand himself through Job as Job is trying to do through Yahweh. It's
Right.
fractal. It's a very much a two-way street, and that's something that is so clear in the text. But you go to your average Protestant or Catholic sermon, that's the last thing they're going to tell you.
Yeah, for sure. It's you know, speaking of shadow work and you know, this deep theological in wonderment. I don't even think that's a word for folks like us. I thought it would be funny to kind of discuss. You know, I rarely discuss astrology, um, and that's because I'm not. I'm versed above more of just Western or you know tropical astrology. I'm partial more into the Vedic idea of astrology, but
Mhm.
it's just something I've never had a good relationship with, and maybe that's a Piscean thing because you know we're both Pisces. Both of our birthdays are next week,
Yeah.
and it's Steven in the chat's a Pisces, and it's so funny because sometimes I'll get really bothered by how accurate, you know, the assumptions of the Piscean nature are, and then they'll just be completely off the mark. But you know, we are all things all the time, you know, and especially we're not just sun signs, right? But
Right.
yeah, I just wanted to. I thought you'd be a great person to kind of help me love myself as a Pisces.
Yeah. We're 2 days away from official Pisces
That's
season
right.
recording this, so happy
My
birthday to all
father's
the
birthday.
Pisces. Oh,
Yeah.
today?
No, on the 19th.
Oh, cool. Nice. Right on the cusp. Right
Mhm.
on. Happy birthday to all Pisces out there. I'm the 22nd. Keats, you're the 23rd, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And this year I'm pretty stoked that my birthday is going to be 2/22/22 on a
I know.
Tuesday. So
That's
that
crazy.
yeah, that's pretty good stuff there. I'm
Yeah.
going to New Orleans, so that'll be cool.
Hell yeah.
Um
I'm teaching all next week, outdoor education, but I'm taking the birthday off and I'll probably do a stream um on that day on I think it's Wednesday, right? Yeah, the 23rd.
mhm.
I'm not even sure. But it's funny, there's a lot of connotation with that too as a kid that grew up, you know, reading Robert Anton Wilson and loving the Temple of Psychic Youth, you know, who Genesis George's birthday, who is on the 22nd as
Oh
well,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
also their love of the number 23 and like, you know, Burroughs's, you know, love of of the number 23. And there's always just been this like very entrenched. It's been easy for me to be entrenched in kind of the numerologically or astrologically uh, fun of, you know, my birthday or, you know, being around it. But yeah, and Jiggy, who we just lost this last week, is on the 25th.
Damn.
But
Rest in
yeah,
peace.
I just yeah, I have this love-hate relationship. You know, also I know it's just more than sun signs, obviously, you know. There's just so many variables to reading it, but there's something that annoys me in the popular consciousness about astrology, you know, and that's kind of these lesser works or this just caring about sun signs or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The constant the like just the nature of the horoscope, right? It
Yeah.
kind of still bugs me because it's just so generic. And yeah, I just wanted to see what your relationship is to this Piscean nature?
Um, yeah, great question because there's a lot of it that bugs me too. I think that it's, but before I say that, I will say that I think there's plenty of food for thought there, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But the things that bug me about it is, I think it is pretty generic. It hasn't the symbolism, although there's something to be said about the inertia of symbols.
Right, or the archetypes themselves.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It I think that it could stand to have just essentially been furthered a little bit more, especially when you consider how many different forms of astrology there are.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's been much of an effort at all to find the common themes between them, which I think is a necessary hurdle to jump.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm not
as
an astrologist.
Westerners, how we've just kind of lapsed into this understanding of tropical astrology when, in any other kind of uh astrological current, we're Aquarians, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
so it's yeah, it's just strange to me how entrenched it is in popular culture, and I see a lot of people kind of just, doing the bare minimum, I think a lot in the especially in this digital sphere within astrology. I've got a
yeah,
lot of great friends though that work, within the Mayan current, the Vedic current, some sidereal or true sky astrology, so it's always been fascinating to me, but I've never really talked about kind of Western astrology on the podcast or discussed it just because I'm still learning to consort with it a bit or to let go of the preconceived notions that people might automatically assume if they find out that I'm a Pisces, right? That
yeah,
annoys the shit
yeah,
out of me.
yeah. I totally get that. And two things I will say about framing astrology in any sort of empirical lens is one, important to remember that in its at its core it is just a symbolization of the axial tilt and the
Sure.
precession, and that's a very legitimate astronomical tenet, but the implications are the more debatable part. But what I will say is that obviously the axial tilt is gauging the Earth's specific relationship to the sun.
Hmm.
And I mean, we know how much the sun affects the human experience, the Goldilocks zone, and all that. So I do think, um, at least, I science has definitely not discounted this, even though, um, the jury's not like out completely. It very much seems that if where you're born on the globe and potentially even the time that you're born might be might reflect your relationship to the sun's energy, because that
Right.
might we know how much of an intrinsic process that plays in the regulation of our circadian rhythms and just our
Right. I mean, especially
neurochemistry.
the moon and its currents. I get that, and that being an emotional center. It's the
Yeah,
reason
I'm
why I always really I enjoyed Vedic more because they're concerned more with your emotional center, and so you'll read your if they do horoscopes or something similar to that, you're reading your moon sign because that's how you're emotionally perceiving this somatic reality. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vedic astrology is very fascinating.
It's fascinating because they're they're just unapologetically specific too.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you ever go to a reader, it's like they'll tell you about knee pain you'll have in 20 years, And I love that. I just love how just certain it is, Not
Yeah.
not saying that it's true, but I really enjoy just how specific they get.
Yeah, I think, there's certainly a possibility, again, in the same sense, the jury's not completely out, in terms of like, is Jupiter giving us some sort of resonance energy? I don't really think that's the case. I think the evidence shows, um, if it is, I mean, there's clearly some sort of communication, like generally speaking, the harmony of the spheres and everything
Right.
has like a vibratory rate. But is that affecting us?
Astro
Like,
music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not so convinced of that, like not enough to really notice it per se, but what I do think,
fascinating stuff. Yeah, but
yeah, I do think the reason that the planets are um integral to astrology and understanding the potential effects is I've always looked at it as something like a protractor, like especially before the advent of technology as we know it. Um, it seems like the other planets were instrumental in, as using like a vantage point to accurately gauge or get as accurate as possible the relationship the Earth had to the sun. If you
yeah.
have another reference point, it makes astronomy a different ball game.
And listen, I absolutely love. I mean, there's nothing more pragmagic, right, than consorting with archetypes. And like, I enjoy the planetary archetypes, and I enjoy
Right.
the many different theological delineations or even magical currents that use that. And I've been kind of experimenting with maybe even in the divergent daily magical ritual to kind of use the planet of the day to kind of help consort what artistic project I'll be working on that day, or
Yeah.
but it's a fun structural way to do it and everything. But I reserve the right to just not subscribe full-heartedly, and I think
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the strong emphasis on astrology being heuristic,
right.
heuristic being the trial and error self-education method that developed philosophy and science as we know it. Before we even knew what empiricism was, we just kind of had to take stabs in the dark and observe the results. And and then you make as educated as a guess as you can, and half the time that's wrong, but it was getting you, it was a step forward, getting you into the right. Hello, Jerry Cthulhu, fellow Pisces.
Yeah, Jerry, good to see you, buddy.
Happy Pisces season to you.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, yep, yep. And
It's funny too because I will say that maybe it's just kind of an inborn belief, but there's definitely something to my circadian rhythm when it constitutes, the moon phases.
mhm, mhm.
It's just something I've definitely in all my time of logging and journaling, I can kind of see patterns in that,
Yeah. See,
and
I think if you have an open mind, I
mhm.
think that you can genuinely see that the solar system does, like, obviously even like Neil deGrasse Tyson, that chump, would admit it. Like that the solar system does affect the human experience. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously. And that's the premise of astrology, that like there's a lot of suppositions and fluff and half truths, but that at the core is the premise of astrology. And not even the most basic astronomer could disagree with that. Um,
right. Yeah.
but also, I think that it's so heuristic, the zodiac symbols, it's so heuristic that it's almost laughable. Like it's largely tongue in cheek. Like,
Mhm.
again, it's just the idea that we're getting in the right direction, but if we're taking all of this literally, then we're taking one step forward and two steps back. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Especially if
Absolutely.
you're
Or
going
yeah, if you just kind of deal with them in absolutes, it
right,
works
right.
for some, it doesn't work for others, it's just yeah, it's just it's when people blanket in absolutes
And I
that
also
annoy the shit out of me. I'll just put it
yeah,
that way.
two of the biggest detriments with people's fascination with astrology today is A, just using their zodiac to understand or to explain away their shortcomings is
Yeah.
very annoying. And
Or
also
to prejudge others. I mean, that's
right.
just the biggest annoyance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one being people who check daily horoscopes and don't make decisions until they've read it or if it falls in line with their horoscope. I don't check daily horoscopes. I think that is
Yeah.
a bit neurotic. But I'm not judging you either. I think it can be
Right.
useful. I'm just saying be careful because there's that whole Oedipus complex thing where
Mhm.
if you hear too much about the future, whether it's true or not, it's going to start to trip you up in your head and you're going to start to make assumptions that you wouldn't have made. And then you might end up proverbially sleeping with your mother. You know?
Oh, that's hilarious. I was like,
Yeah.
where are you going with Oedipus complex?
No, but yeah, like because he knew the future,
Right.
because he knew those prophecies, it was the only
Exactly.
reason
Yeah,
he
yeah.
slipped up to begin with.
Yeah, and it's the same reason, and I've been on many channels, and I've kind of been the one foot in the woo goof juice kind of person in a lot of debunker channels, and
Yeah, I like that.
otherwise, and there'll be a lot of this anti-tarot talk, and I'm like, you're not understanding the pragmatic uh institution that tarot has of
Right.
consorting with these archetypes and maybe getting kind of an outside view on a problem you're having. It's not necessarily divinatory. I mean, it could be maybe, but it's not divinatory all the time. And it's actually, a great tool for me, especially to get through like a writer's block problem or
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just this, and I can see that astrology could be a tool like that as well. Um,
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. Help
so
you
yeah, there's a
get
place
into
for it.
that transpersonal state of mind outside of your own limited egoic perspectives. And that's why some of the archetypes are so or in general, the premise of the archetype is powerful because it helps us embody different perspectives as wholeheartedly as we can manage.
Yeah.
And that's also why psychedelics can be useful.
There's a portmanteau you use in Hunt Manual that I loved because I'm a big portmanteau fan, but psychedelics.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I love that term.
definitely
Um,
a psychedelic.
yeah, through and through, man, through and through. Me too.
But yeah, I love this comment. The spheres harmonize with the third and material music that our lives dance with. Yeah, and
Right.
that just reminds me of, obviously this idea of the Trinity, or like, the Burroughs Geisen idea of the third mind, and the agent, the creation, and then those together being the third mind, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, so I just yeah, I dig that. I can definitely hear that.
Absolutely. And I don't think people get just too new agey with things sometime. I still hear people talk about how they think that the Egyptian mystery priests were using tarot cards, and how those people the gypsies were the descendants of the Egyptian mystery priests and brought tarot cards all over the world. Like, that is so mythological. It's
You're
not even
right.
close to being true.
Yeah.
But you'll hear that in published new age books to this day still.
Well, and it's just this sad advent, and this is why I really enjoy, kind of this idea of the imaginarium being the collective unconscious, and
Right.
the
Agreed.
multiversity of just creations, kind of, because like there's this sad and pomposity within the new age community to make everything seem more real and true by lying about its origins, or
Kind of like
creating some sort of tactile backstory, and it doesn't need to happen. Like tarot can still work with it being invented as a game. It's like,
absolutely.
yeah.
Some of the negative aspects of the new age community, and I mean esotericism as well. People get very pompous with like classical quote unquote high magic and stuff too. But
Hmm.
they're at least studying the real subject matter, like the source material. We got to give them credit for that. New age, a lot of the time, um, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it came from the Visconti family, among other things. The tarot deck originally, yeah,
Yeah, it's a
absolutely. There's a
game.
lot of
Yeah, as
yeah.
I
It
said.
started out as a game, yeah.
Mhm.
And anyway, hold on. That was a good point, but it derailed me.
Yeah, I think we
um,
were just talking about the pomposity of,
right,
kind of
right. So
inventing backgrounds for metaphysical ideas, not in like the Kabbalion, right? And I think,
right.
I've talked to Mitch Horowitz about this. Now, the Kabbalion, its generation was fake. It wasn't created by three
Hmm.
initiates. It
Hmm.
was, a publisher somewhere that kind of, condensed Hermetic philosophy and put it out as kind of an unearthed treasure by the three initiates. Now, I do enjoy the pomp and circumstance, or like the ceremonial idea of that, in a tongue-in-cheek way, but
Right.
it's and I'm not saying that I believe the Kabbalion, but I do believe it works for some, and that shouldn't, just because it was invented by some dude, trying to make a buck in the new age community. It doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? It doesn't have value for the people that it has value for.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, the Lesser Keys of Solomon wasn't
Right.
actually written by Solomon. None of these books were written by the people that they're titled after. Most of them, unless we're talking about like Crowley or but like
Mhm.
these mythologized characters, they've almost never like written the book. So I don't understand what the whole beef is with the Kabbalion. I'm not even like a huge fan
Yeah.
one way or the other. And I would just completely agree with your sentiment there. But
Yeah, I
I've
think
seen
it's
people trash it, and
yeah.
I'm fine with that because I don't have any attachment to it. But also, it's like that seems like a bit of a double standard,
I think
right?
it's in the vein of in like Wicca too, as Jerry brings up. I think it's in the vein that people stop at that and as an absolute and don't look at its influences and don't
Yeah.
dive deeper. I know a lot of hermetic magicians that are annoyed with the Kabbalion for kind of being the stopgap of, a lot of people's interest and exploration or seeking of these principles. And that's annoying to people that are like, well, it's not only is it condensing things, but it's kind of bastardizing them in a way
Yeah.
of something that I hold sacred, right? Like I said, I enjoy just creation in general and just the imagination. It's the reason why I have Alan Moore as the Alan Moore quote in the beginning of my title sequence, is because he comes from this belief that just kind of empowering anything, or creating or creating your own universe, your micro universe, as Grant Morrison has said about a hyper sigil.
Mhm.
Like it's just as good, if not even more powerful, that it started as a thought and it wasn't, dispatched by the hands of gods or goddesses. And maybe it
Right.
was, but it started from somebody just earnestly creating.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like it's more and more difficult to have an honest conversation about metaphysics in the modern era without not only talking about archetypes but talking about memetics as well. And the whole idea of like science in and of itself has uh resolutely demonstrated the fact that ideas um the so these are good comments. So they're derailing me a little bit because
sorry
I'm
about
actually
that. Yeah,
interested.
I'll
No,
wait.
no, it's all like I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And I would agree. The Corpus Hermeticum as opposed to the Kabbalion, square one. Like
Yeah,
you should be going. I'm always about the source material.
yeah, me as
Go
well.
to, and again, even though it wasn't written by Hermes himself, obviously,
Yeah.
like it's clearly the source material there. But as I think that I don't know, you could probably say that the Kabbalion is similar to New Age BS, but I think it has a little bit more of a backbone than that. Um, but again, this is just an aside. I don't even really have like a deep opinion on it to begin with. But
I mean, neither do I. Yeah, I was just using it, I think, as a prime example because it's
yeah,
fresh in my head.
no
Because I know Mitch
fun
Horowitz has been a
topics.
proponent for it, and I'm for that too. Like, love, take whatever you can get that works for you.
Yeah,
I think it just means more to me when people are, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But just because, it pisses me off that it had to hide behind the three initiates, right? When it was
right,
just be a dude that wrote this and say, here's a
absolutely,
bastardized version of the Corpus Hermeticum, right? Like,
right. So true,
yeah,
absolutely. Um, but yeah, um,
yeah. Spend the
uh,
rest of your life trying to figure it out.
yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. You brought up Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, though.
Yeah.
Definitely too. Like I tried, and that was part of the reason why I enjoyed working with Eric doing the cover for Hunt Manuals. He's got such strong like esoteric metaphysical comic book like chaos magic roots,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
No gods but my own. The shit that he's doing now is like, even with mundane magic. I actually have his disruption generator, one of the few decks ever
nice,
made, right here. But
lovely.
no, we're on the same wavelength so much about his thoughts. And yeah, Grant, it comes down to Grant and Alan a lot, you know.
Yeah, I'm and Martin over at the Alchemical Mind, who edited the book, he's very deep into, like, he was raised on comic books, and like very much is that unique sort of mind that has digested a ton of like dense esoteric uh subject matter, and has also just kept in step with comic book history all throughout. And so
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
I really am going to try my best. I think it'll be able to happen to get Eric and Martin on for my upcoming show at some point, because I would love to hear them just go off hard about
Yeah.
esotericism in comic books, man.
I mean, yeah, me and yeah, Eric and I are always talking about it. Comics meant a lot to me growing up too. But you know, to
Well,
go back to the Alan Moore thing, and we'll probably have to wrap up soon.
yeah, no
But
worries.
you know, Alan Moore is his god. He decided that he would you know, empower and treat and do ritual to Glycon, which is this, you know, this ancient archaic snake puppet in like Macedonia or something that, you know, was like one of the first charlatan kind of fake cults. And I love that he's just like, this is incredible. It's tongue in cheek, it's funny, but it's me and it makes sense. And I'm gonna make that the, you know, the purveyor of my magical craft, which is like, you know, a serious business,
Yeah,
right?
I totally get it too. I get it,
Yeah.
and it's like that tongue in cheek sort of Kaufman-esque Fortean-ish approach to, like, be taking yourself as seriously as you should, but not too much. You know, keeping
Right.
a bit of that mirth in there. And if people don't get the parts of the joke, if they can't separate the tongue in cheek from the reality, then fuck them. It doesn't. They don't matter anyway.
Hell
So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I was going to ask the chat if anyone has any questions for Anthony. We're probably going to wrap up soon. My alarm just went off. Um, but yeah, please put them in all caps in the chat. Otherwise, you know, I'd like to say thank you to Charles, was once me, Jasmine, Jerry, Steven, Jonaside. So many people here today. I love it. Reemsey, um, I think Jill was here earlier. And sorry if
Yeah.
I missed your name. Eric was here listening.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I appreciate anybody tuning in. I really do, and I invite you to, take a look at my work. Dive Manual, Hunt Manual, divemind.net. You can find me on Twitter or Facebook and start a dialogue. I'm always happy to chat. And last thing that I'll plug, I'm finally breaking down and doing my own show. I'm gonna be doing it
that's
on
right.
the Fringe FM. And Joe Roop finally talked me into it. He's been trying to get me to do it for a while, and it's going to be called Black Hoodie Alchemy. It'll be in the evenings. The very general date set right now, so it'll be the beginning of March, and it'll be the evenings, either a Monday or Tuesday. But the key takeaways there is the show is definitely happening. It's going to be Black Hoodie Alchemy. It'll be on the Fringe, and stay tuned. You just go to the Fringe FM or divemind.net for any updates. It'll be pretty well posted. So, and thanks
Yeah, and
again for
I'm just
listening.
letting people know to check the video description. I have all of his links in there.
Cool.
And
Cool.
yeah, Jerry, get Anthony on the obelisk, or you know, I don't know if have you done Nox Mente?
No, but I'd be
No.
I'd be happy to talk shop. Hit
Yeah,
me up, Jerry.
Jerry and
Um,
Nish have awesome shows.
cool.
Really good friends, and
Yeah, I've heard
yeah,
that name around before. I'm not sure where. Probably on Twitter. I've seen Jerry Cthulhu floating around. So good to meet your acquaintance again, or see you around
yeah,
again. And dude, thanks a lot, Keats, for having me back on. We'll do this again soon. I'll even have you on my show eventually.
yeah. Please do. I know
Yeah.
I was on Joe's show, and you know, off air, he was like, "So what are you doing?" And I just wasn't in the place to kind of be accountable for, you know, a radio show at that point.
I
And
haven't been either, so I get
yeah,
it. I'm just now getting there, and especially since it's at least the option of being live and like in a little more of a scheduled format. It's a little
yeah,
bit more of a dedication. So, but it's an open offer for you, homie. Just let us know when you wanna try to work with it. And
word, yeah.
yeah, cool.
I'm you know, that's what the point of these daily streams is, you know, become a better orator, get back into broadcasting, and you know, get on this horse again.
Hell yeah,
And
hell yeah.
as we reach into our birthdays, you know, and this new era and Lupercalia that just happened, this new snow moon, you know, let's fucking push forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a great Pisces season to everybody.
Yes.
And I hope you do well.
Una, good to see you. And hopefully everyone can look up Anthony in the description, purchase Hunt Manual, purchase Dive Manual, go to divemind.net. Also, this will be a podcast eventually. Remember to subscribe to PRAGMAGICK on Spotify, the dreaded Spotify, iTunes, wherever, you know.
How did Spotify become so political out of nowhere?
I know,
the
right?
world is so weird. Man.
They've always sucked for musicians, though.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
But yeah, you subscribe it there. I don't give a shit. Wherever you want to subscribe here. Let me know if anyone likes watching this on Twitch. I think I've just been like twitching into the ether with these. So yeah, let me know.
Twitching into the ether.
Yeah. And yeah, check out pragmagick.com for all the links. And I got nothing. As we say in We the Hollowed, the only way to achieve true immortality is through art and ideas. And so
Amen.
with that, haunt on.
When we are doing the will of our true self, we are inevitably doing the will of the universe. In magic, these are seen as indistinguishable. That every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself. And as long as you are doing the will of the universe, then it is impossible to do anything wrong.